Welcome to the garden, fan brews. I am your host, KW. Welcome to FanTea. This is FanTea, the show where we will be discussing all the hot drama in fandoms today. I am excited to start the very first episode of FanTea with you all, the fan brews. Yes, one and all. Welcome to the garden. Have a seat. Grab a cup of tea. For this episode, I recommend black tea, because we are going to get woke for this episode. You will be offended. This episode is going to be about reality versus fantasy. Sip on that. I wanted to start a fun series where we could have a sit-down discussion about all the drama in fandoms, and I thought the most perfect start to any drama would be to just delve right into the biggest problem that encompasses all parts of fandoms, and that is the reality and the fantasy mixing together, blurring together, and causing problems. The drama, the tea. Take the canon, the anime, the show, the movie, the comic book, any of that. You take the canon of it, and you have so many people who enjoy just that part. But then they want to express themselves or something that they really found more interesting and build upon that part that they found more interesting within the canon and create what is known as an AU, an alternate universe. And there are so many alternate universes that expand throughout different fandoms. They create so much fan art, fan fiction, and shipping. But for today's episode, we're not going to delve into all of those things. The shipping can be its own episode. The fan art can be its own episode. Right now, let's talk about the whole. The fandoms as a whole and how they handle themselves. In my opinion, there is the canon, the almighty, the never-changing, and then separate from that is the ever-changing, the fandom, where there are AUs, and then AUs, and AUs, and AUs within AUs. All the AUs, where you are free to create whatever you wish from the canon. You can take pieces from the canon, you can take only characters, only plot points, what have you, and create your own little world around it. For many of us, fandoms are our escape from reality. And, for lack of a better word, it is our safe place. It's where we go to get away, and we want it to be what we want it to be. So maybe we liked this anime, or this movie, or what have you. I'm not going to ever specify a fandom in this episode. But perhaps you enjoy that fandom because it has such deep meaning for you, the character, the plot point, what have you. So whenever you create your own AU, to have that character be with someone that they weren't with in the canon, or have them do something that they never would have done in the canon, and you express yourself through that, and it's so much fun and great. And then someone tells you, you can't do that. You can't ship that. You can't like the character like that. You can't like that type of character. You can't like that type of plot point. You're a bad person if XYZ because of this fictional universe. Reality versus fantasy. Where exactly do they meet? Back whenever I was younger in fandoms, I was extremely religious. Thus meaning I didn't like homosexuals. So then came upon this thing called yaoi and yuri, which scared me a little bit, and I did not enjoy seeing my favorite character smooching upon the same sex for religious purposes. I then found myself for the very first time feeling I needed to police the fandom. I didn't want that coming into my safe place. I didn't want to see things that would be unholy. I need to take a sip for that. I'm sorry. I'm going back to a dark time in my life. I didn't want to see my favorite character behaving in a way that I felt they wouldn't. So I would block and reject and tell anyone who enjoyed yaoi or yuri that they were a bad person, and how dare they? Don't they know what they're doing is wrong? Thankfully now, I am not that way. I too enjoy yaoi and yuri. I've developed, I've grown, and in some parts, there is a little bit of fandom assistance to thank for that. For me coming around to the idea and being more comfortable with it. I will not say that it is what shaped me into being a more open-minded person on that, because there was a whole lot of reality situations happening that was making me feel guilted for hating and being uncomfortable with. Now, I'm completely open and comfortable and fine with it. However, it was very scary for me at that time, and I remember being extremely offended, extremely upset as it became larger and larger and more prominent in fandoms than even the heterosexual ships. I wanted it to be my safe place where nothing could change the character from who they were or how they were. So I created my own little AU universe. So, branching away from the canon, but I tried to leave everything as canonly accurate as possible. I remember delving into how every character behaved, and I wanted to make sure that if I wrote a fanfic, that I would see how they would handle that type of situation as if it was canon, so that I wouldn't stray too much away from their real personality, because that was so important to me. I did not want anything to enter into my safe place. And I would tell people that I didn't want to be around them if they wouldn't stop telling me that they liked a yaoi couple within my fandom. Nowadays, that's pretty common. It wasn't extremely common back then to have people extremely policing and telling their friends that they were bad people if they liked X, Y, and Z in a fictional universe. Oh, you like that character? You're a bad person because somehow you can like such a bad character. How dare. We didn't have that so much, but nowadays, that's pretty common to hear. When I would go to conventions as a young teenager, it was just surprising and fun to be around people who enjoyed the same thing as I did outside of the anonymity of the internet. Now we were face to face, and we enjoyed the same things, and yes, we may not fully agree on ships, but it was still so much fun to just see them and hang out with them and realize that they weren't actually a bad person because of what they ship. It was phenomenal. And now, I go to conventions, and I am told,
don't talk to them.
Well, why? They seem nice.
They ship such and such, and they enjoy such and such character, and they enjoy such and such plot points. Don't talk to them. They're toxic.
I kept hearing that at recent cons that I've been to, that I cannot hang out with so-and-so because they are a toxic person for what they enjoy in their fantasy fictional world. And it made me have to seal my lips a little, for fear that these people I was having a grand, wonderful time with and we were getting along so well would reject me and banish me into the pits of the fandom hell, where I belong, obviously, with that commoner, because I, too, enjoyed those things. yes, I believe that you can enjoy something in a fantasy world that you would not enjoy in reality. In many, many animes, the canon has so many things in it that you hope would never actually happen in reality. I enjoy very, very many toxic things within the fictional universes. For me, creating an AU, a fictional world within a fandom, I am the god. I can create, I can destroy, I can dismantle, I can do whatever I please. I love to see toxic situations happen between characters. I love toxic ships. I love just toxic characters in general. Ones that I would marry if I could. However, I'm not an idiot. I recognize that to marry that character, first of all, can't happen, but second of all, would be bad. Bad for me. Very, very bad for me. If they came to life and they became a real person, no longer in the fictional, drawn world that they live in. Yes, I am referencing a very specific character. I said I wouldn't, but I have to. My husband. If he were to come to life in the real world, I would not actually like him. I would not actually want to marry him. If I could really be hurt, or someone around me really be hurt, or even strangers for that matter, or animals, or things, be hurt because of him, no, I would not want anything to do with him. But in the fictional world, he is wonderful because he's awful and terrible and toxic. I know where to blur the lines. I would not want to see these things playing out in the real world, but in the fictional world, I eat that up. Same with shipping. There are things within ships that may potentially trigger me, and I am not using that term lightly. That will be another episode, but I don't use that term lightly. When I say it would trigger me, I do mean the actual trigger of having a PTSD trigger, which I am diagnosed with, and I do have occasionally, and sadly, unfortunately, I have had it from fictional universes. Just the thoughts of things, or the seeing certain things, or hearing certain things will trigger me. I'm not proud of it, I don't like it, I wish it could go away, but that's why I have therapy. And I use fictional universes to help me explore things that make me very triggered. Exposure therapy, but within a fictional realm where it can't actually touch me, it can't actually do anything to me except make me think. But I do recognize that because fandoms are sometimes our safe places, where it helps us to put up the wall and close off from reality for a while, we don't want to think about those things. We don't want to think about a toxic relationship that we were in, or a horrible traumatic situation that we were in. So we don't want it to enter our safe place. I just deflowered the wall.
Long live the king.
We don't want that to happen to us. We don't want to hear it, see it, think about it at all. So to have someone enjoy that thing that makes us think about those horrible, awful things, how dare they? They must be wrong and evil, and they must be okay with the fact that it happened to you, right? That's how you feel. That's how I once felt. You must be okay with it if you're okay with it in the fictional world. Because to be okay with it in the fictional world means that you've somehow convoluted the idea into your head to believe that if it can somehow work out in a fantasy world, it must be okay somehow to work in reality. And no, it is never okay to happen in reality. How dare you? Don't you get that? I do get it. I fully understand how scary it is to have something traumatic enter into your safe zone. A character that potentially represents something about yourself that may be something you are protecting because it was hurt during a traumatic situation, and this character represents that to you, and you must protect this little cinnamon roll at all cost because you were not, and you wish that you had been, but you have the power as the god of this fictional world to protect this little cinnamon roll. And to feel like someone is taking that cinnamon roll and twisting it around and hurting it and reminding it of situations that happened to you, or doing those things to the cinnamon roll that happened to you. We don't want that. It's traumatic, it's scary, it's terrifying. It's scary for me too. I don't like to think that someone I trust is okay with that happening, because I know what it feels like to have that happen. However, if you talk to the people that you're told, don't hang out with them, they're toxic because they ship that, or they like that, or they're okay with that in a fictional world, if you talk to them, 99% of the time, I have found that no, they would never be okay with that happening in reality. I am the same way. The things that I enjoy in my fictional world are only okay in the fictional world, where these characters are not real, nobody's really getting hurt, nothing is harmed, no one is in danger. It's all fantasy. It's just a thought. And that's the most powerful thing that I have been able to help me when I am triggered by something within a fandom, is remembering the line between the fantasy and the reality. I know that this is a hard tea to swallow. For some, possibly not. You know the difference between the fantasy and the reality. But for others, you may be offended. You may feel a little attacked right now. I don't mean to offend you. I don't think less of you if you do feel very, very personal attachments to a fandom. But I hope that you will take what I said in mind, to try to remember that it is not real, you are safe, your AU is yours and yours alone, no one else can touch it. If they take that character from canon and take it into their own AU, it's not yours. That doesn't at all represent you, it never will. It'll never be anything that you have to deal with. You may have to hear about it a little bit, potentially online or at con, but it doesn't mean that you have to take it in for your AU. Your AU is strong, your AU is yours, forever and always, or however long you enjoy the fandom. It's a fun world out there in the fandom universes, but there's a whole lot of drama. So with that, we have FanTea, and I hope that you will subscribe for more episodes to come. Don't forget to always come with a hot cup of tea. Come to my garden, leave me a comment down below on what topics you would like to hear about in FanTea, or leave me a comment down below on a situation where you've been shamed for something that you enjoy in a fictional universe that you for certain would not actually enjoy in reality. Let's talk about it, let's sip on it, and I will see you all next time.